3 weeks had passed since the night the pirates came. The steady horizon sat in dry dock at Port Valencia, a colonial repair station that orbited a gas giant at the edge of the Volner system. The damage from the battle had been fixed. The viewport was replaced. The control console repaired. Even the blood had been cleaned from the deck. Though sometimes Danny could still smell the copper and chemical tang when he closed his eyes. Colonial authorities had taken Vorn Gresk and his surviving pirates into custody. The investigation was complete. Statements had been given. Reports had been filed. The Kef Syndicate was being dismantled piece by piece as captured pirates gave up information in exchange for lighter sentences. Danny Cole stood in his galley, preparing lunch for the crew. The familiar routine had returned. Vegetables to chop, bread to bake, soup to stir. His hands moved through the motions without conscious thought, following patterns carved into muscle memory by 3 years of peaceful repetition. His wounds had healed, mostly. The cracked ribs still ached when he breathed too deeply. The burns on his side had scarred. But he was alive, and everyone on the ship was alive, and that was enough. The door to the galley opened. Captain Laura Griffin stepped inside and leaned against the counter. She had a new scar above her eye where Vorn had struck her, a thin white line that would fade with time. "Smells good in here," she said. "Vegetable soup. Fresh bread. Nothing special. Everything you make is special, Danny. I realize that now." He kept his eyes on his work. "Just doing my job." Griffin was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been hanging between them since that night. "Who were you before this ship?" "Before the cooking?" Danny stopped stirring. He set down the spoon and turned to face her. "I was a soldier. Colonial Marine Corps, Special Operations Division. They call us ghost units because we didn't officially exist. We handled problems that couldn't be solved through normal channels. Problems? Hostile leaders who needed to disappear. Facilities that needed to be destroyed without anyone knowing who did it. That kind of work." Griffin nodded slowly. She did not seem shocked. She had probably figured out most of this already. "What made you stop?" Danny's jaw tightened. This was the part he never talked about. The part that woke him up at night sometimes, covered in sweat, hearing sounds that existed only in his memory. There was a mission. Intelligence said an enemy commander was hiding in a residential building. We were ordered to eliminate the target with no witnesses. He paused. The words felt like stones in his mouth. The intelligence was wrong. The commander wasn't there. Just families. Civilians, children. Griffin's expression changed. Understanding mixed with sadness. "I followed orders," Danny continued. "That's what soldiers do. But after that night, I couldn't follow orders anymore. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I couldn't be that weapon they had made me. So you became a cook. I wanted to give instead of take. Create instead of destroy. Feeding people felt like the opposite of everything I had done before." Griffin reached out and put her hand on his arm. "The man who saved my crew is not a monster. Danny, whatever happened in your past, the person you are now is good and brave and decent. I've seen enough of the universe to know the difference." Danny felt something loosen in his chest. He had carried that weight alone for so long. Hearing someone else say those words, even if he could not fully believe them yet, made the burden lighter. "Thank you, Captain. Laura. After what we've been through, you can call me Laura." He nodded. "Thank you, Laura." She straightened up and moved toward the door. "The repairs are done. We're scheduled to depart tomorrow morning. The crew has been asking about you. They want to know if you're staying." Danny looked around his galley. The pots and pans hanging in their proper places. The knives on the magnetic strip. The small stool in the corner where he sat during quiet moments. Where else would I go?" Griffin smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen from her since before the attack. "Good answer. Lunch in 30 minutes?" "Lunch in 30 minutes." She left, and Danny returned to his work. The afternoon passed quietly. Crew members came and went, picking up their meals and lingering to talk in ways they never had before. Pete Lawson thanked Danny for the 50th time this week. Kevin Park apologized again for treating Danny like he was invisible, and Danny accepted the apology again with patience and grace. The change in how they saw him was strange. Not bad, but strange. For 3 years, Danny had been the background, the furniture, the man who made food appear and then vanished. Now they looked at him with respect and curiosity and something that might have been awe. He was not sure how he felt about that. Tina Morris came by in the late afternoon after her shift in engineering. She hopped up on the counter the way she always did, her legs swinging as she watched him prepare dinner. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can ask." Might not answer. Fair enough. She hesitated. "The man I knew before, the quiet cook who made my breakfast every morning. Was that real? Or was it just an act to hide who you really were?" Danny considered the question carefully. It deserved a careful answer. "Both versions are real," he said finally. "The soldier is part of me. I can't erase that, no matter how much I wish I could. But the cook is real too. The man who wants to make good food and live a peaceful life. That's not pretend. So which one is the real you?" "The one I choose to be. I choose this." He gestured at the galley around them. "Every day, I choose this." Tina nodded. Her expression softened. "I'm glad you stayed. The ship wouldn't be the same without you. The ship would survive. Ships always do. Maybe. But we would miss you." She left him alone with his thoughts. The next morning, the Steady Horizon departed Port Valencia and resumed its route through the trade lanes of the Valner system. The stars stretched endlessly ahead of them, cold and bright and full of unknown dangers. Somewhere out there, more pirates waited. More threats lurked. The universe was not a safe place, and it never would be. But aboard this one small ship, 12 people went about their lives in relative peace. They did their jobs. They complained about the food even though they all loved it. They argued about politics and sports and music during dinner. They were a crew, a family of sorts. Danny served breakfast in the mess hall. Captain Griffin took her usual seat by the window. Kevin Park loaded his plate without making eye contact, though he nodded in acknowledgement now. Tina grabbed extra toast and winked at him. Pete spilled his coffee and apologized to no one in particular. Everything was the same. Everything was different. Danny returned to his galley after the meal was finished. He washed the dishes by hand even though the ship had an automatic cleaner. The work was meditative, calming. It gave his hands something to do while his mind wandered. He thought about the hidden compartment beneath his floor. The armor and weapons were sealed inside once more. A thin layer of dust would gather on the panel over time. Maybe no one would ever open it again. Maybe the ghost would sleep forever. Or maybe, someday, the universe would come calling once more. Maybe another threat would find its way to this small cargo ship, and the ordinary people who called it home. If that day came, Danny would be ready. He would protect his crew with everything he had, because that was who he chose to be. Not a weapon. Not a killer, a protector. But until that day, he would cook. He would serve meals on the ship. He would be Danny Cole, the quiet man in the galley who remembered everyone's favorite dishes and never asked for thanks. That was enough. That was everything. He picked up his knife and began preparing lunch. The blade caught the light as it moved through vegetables with practiced ease. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear Tina arguing with Kevin about something trivial. Captain Griffin's voice came over the intercom, announcing their next destination. Danny smiled and kept working. Tomorrow, he would make fresh bread again. The crew always liked it when he made fresh bread. Vorn Gresk moved first. His massive body crossed the distance between them with terrifying speed, all four arms swinging in a pattern designed to overwhelm any defense. The plasma blade hummed as it cut through the air, leaving trails of heat that Danny could feel against his skin. Danny dodged the first strike by centimeters. He ducked under the second. The third caught the edge of his shirt and burned a line across his ribs. Pain flared, but he ignored it. Pain was information. Pain meant he was still alive. He counterattacked with a kick to Vorn's knee. The Talisian did not even flinch. His leg was like hitting a metal beam. Danny rolled away as two more arms swept toward his head. Fast, Vorn admitted. But speed alone will not save you. Danny circled to the left, putting distance between them. His mind raced through possibilities. Vorn Gresk was stronger, larger, and had twice as many limbs. A fair fight was suicide. Danny needed to make the fight unfair. He glanced at the crew behind Vorn. They were still on their knees, watching with wide eyes. Tina had her hands pressed over her mouth. Captain Griffin was trying to stand despite her injuries. "Stay down," Danny called to them. "All of you, stay down." Vorn charged again. This time, Danny did not try to dodge completely. He moved into the attack, inside the reach of the plasma blade. His knife flashed. He felt it bite into the flesh of Vorn's lower right arm, the one not holding the weapon. The pirate roared in anger rather than pain. One of his free hands closed around Danny's throat and lifted him off the floor. Danny's feet kicked empty air. His vision started to darken at the edges. Vorn's black eyes stared into his with something like curiosity. "You cut me," the pirate said. "No one has cut me in years. Who are you, little human? What are you?" Danny could not answer. He could barely breathe. But his hands were still free. He drove his knife into the arm that held him, right where the tendons met the wrist. Vorn's grip loosened involuntarily. Danny twisted free and fell to the deck, gasping for air. Before he could recover, Vorn kicked him across the room. Danny hit the far wall and slid down, his entire body screaming in protest. Something was cracked in his chest. Maybe a rib. Maybe more. Vorn examined his wounded arm. Purple blood dripped from the cuts, but he did not seem concerned. Interesting technique. Military training. Not regular forces. Something special. Danny pushed himself to his feet. The room tilted around him, but he forced his legs to hold steady. "Colonial Marines," he said. His voice was rough from the damage to his throat. "Silent operations." Vorn's eyes narrowed with recognition. "Ghost units? I have heard stories. Humans who move like shadows and kill without sound. I thought they were legends. Not legends. Then I am honored." Vorn raised his plasma blade again. "I will mount your skull on my ship as a trophy. The ghost who almost escaped." He attacked. Danny defended. The fight became a blur of motion and pain. Danny was skilled, but Vorn was relentless. Four arms allowed the pirate to attack and defend simultaneously. Every time Danny created an opening, another limb would close it. Every time he landed a strike, Vorn absorbed the damage and kept coming. They crashed through a control console. They shattered a viewport that showed the stars beyond. Emergency seals activated to prevent the atmosphere from escaping. The deck was slick with purple and red blood, both of them bleeding from multiple wounds. Danny felt his strength failing. He had been a soldier once, but that was years ago. His body was not what it used to be. His reflexes were slower. His endurance shorter. Vorn knew it too. The pirate smiled as he pressed his advantage, driving Danny back toward the corner of the room. "You should have stayed in your kitchen," Vorn said. "You should have hidden with the other helpless creatures." Now you will die knowing that you failed to protect them. Danny's back hit the wall. Nowhere left to run. Vorn raised his plasma blade for the killing strike. A metal food tray hit the pirate in the back of the head. Vorn spun around in surprise. Tina Morris stood behind him, another tray in her hands, terror and determination fighting for control of her face. "Leave him alone," she said. Her voice trembled but did not break. Vorn laughed. "The little engineer wants to play hero." "How touching." He reached for her with one of his wounded arms. Danny moved. His body screamed in protest, but he had trained for decades to ignore that scream. He had survived missions that should have killed him 100 times over. He had walked through fire and darkness and come out the other side. One more time. Just one more time. He grabbed Vorn's plasma blade arm at the wrist and pulled with all his remaining strength. The sudden force disrupted Vorn's balance. Danny planted his feet and used the pirate's own momentum against him, redirecting the massive body into the wall. The plasma blade flew from Vorn's grip and skittered across the floor. Danny did not hesitate. He struck Vorn's throat with the edge of his hand, crushing the windpipe. He drove his knee into the nerve cluster on the pirate's inner thigh. He attacked the eyes, the ears, the joints, everywhere that was vulnerable, regardless of size or strength. Vorn flailed with all 4 arms. But Danny was too close and too fast. This was what the ghost units had trained for. This was the art of killing giants. The pirate fell to one knee. Then the other. Danny stood over him, breathing hard, blood dripping from wounds he could not count. His knife was in his hand again, pressed against Vorn's throat. "You could have walked away," Danny said. Vorn coughed. Purple blood sprayed from his lips. "I am Vorn Gresk. I do not walk away." "Then you die on your knees like everyone else." Danny looked at Captain Griffin. She had managed to stand now, supported by Kevin Park. "Your call, Captain." "He would have killed all of us. He's killed thousands before. But this is your ship." Lara Griffin stared at the fallen pirate. Her face was bruised and bloody, but her eyes were clear. She thought for a long moment. "Secure him," she finally said. "Colonial authorities can deal with him. We're not executioners." Danny nodded. Part of him wanted to end Vorn Gresk right there. Part of him wanted to make sure this monster never hurt anyone again. But he had left that life behind for a reason. He had chosen to be something different. Something better. He stepped back from the pirate and lowered his knife. Vorn's black eyes followed him. "Weak. Your mercy makes you weak. I will escape. I will find you. I will make you regret this moment." "Maybe," Danny said. "But not today." He turned to the crew. They were all staring at him like they had never seen him before. In a way, they had not. The man who made their breakfast was gone. In his place stood someone else entirely. Tina approached him slowly. Her hands were still shaking from her attack on Vorn. "You saved us," she said. "You saved all of us. You helped." That tray throw was good timing. She almost laughed. Almost. "I was aiming for his head. I missed by a foot. Still worked." Kevin Park helped secure Vorn with emergency restraints, while Pete Lawson contacted the nearest colonial patrol station. The 3 pirates from the boarding team were still alive on the damaged freighter, unconscious but breathing. The 8 others were scattered throughout the steady horizon. All disabled, but none killed. Danny had not taken a single life tonight. That mattered to him more than he could explain. Captain Griffin walked over to him as the adrenaline finally began to fade. She looked at his wounds and frowned. "You need medical attention. I'll manage." That wasn't a suggestion. She paused. "We need to talk. About who you really are. About what just happened. I know. But not now. Now you let Tina patch you up. We can talk when you're not bleeding all over my deck." Danny allowed himself a small smile. Fair enough, Captain. He let Tina lead him toward the medical bay. Behind him, Vorn Gresk sat in restraints, glaring at the crew with murderous hatred. The pirate lord had been beaten by a cook. That shame would burn in him forever. But Danny did not look back. The ghost was sleeping again. The cook was all that remained. Danny pulled back from the grating and moved through the ventilation tunnels with silent purpose. He could not attack Vorn Gresk directly. Not yet. 8 pirates stood between him and the crew, and even the ghost of his former self could not fight those odds in an open confrontation. He needed to change the numbers. The Steady Horizon's environmental systems were controlled from a small room near engineering. Danny had studied the ship's blueprints during his first week aboard. He knew every corridor, every maintenance shaft, every emergency override. Knowledge was survival. He had learned that lesson long ago in places he tried to forget. He reached the environmental control room through a ceiling hatch. The room was empty. The pirates had not bothered to secure it because they did not understand how dangerous a ship could become in the hands of someone who knew its secrets. Danny accessed the control panel with quick, practiced movements. He entered commands that would have surprised anyone who thought he was just a simple cook. Steam vents could be redirected. Lights could be cut to specific sections. Emergency bulkheads could seal corridors and trap anyone inside. The ship was his weapon now. He programmed a sequence and set a timer. 60 seconds. Then he moved back into the tunnels. On the main deck below, Vorn Gresk had paused his interrogation. He was speaking to one of his human pirates, a scarred man with cruel eyes. "Take 3 others and secure the engine room," Vorn ordered. "I want this ship ready to fly within the hour." The scarred man nodded and gathered 3 Talisian pirates. They left the main deck and headed toward engineering. 4 targets, separated from the group. Exactly what Danny needed. He followed them through the tunnels above, staying parallel to their path. The corridors were dim now, emergency lighting casting red shadows on the walls. The pirates moved with weapons ready, but they were not worried. They had done this many times before. Board a ship. Take what they wanted. Leave nothing behind. They had never faced someone like Danny. Cole. The timer reached 0. Steam exploded from vents in the corridor around the 4 pirates. The white cloud filled the air instantly, blinding them and burning exposed skin. They shouted in pain and confusion, firing their weapons wildly at nothing. Danny dropped from a ceiling hatch behind them. His movements were precise and economical. No wasted motion. No hesitation. He struck the first pirate at the base of the skull and caught him as he fell, using the body as a shield. The second pirate turned toward the sound and received a knife thrust to the shoulder, exactly where the nerve cluster would disable his arm. The third fired blindly and hit his own companion. Danny finished him with a kick to the knee and an elbow to the temple. The scarred human was last. He backed against the wall, plasma rifle raised, trying to see through the steam. "Who's there?" he demanded. "Show yourself." Danny stepped out of the white cloud. His face was calm, his breathing steady. He looked like a man taking a morning walk, not someone who had just defeated 3 armed fighters. "Drop the weapon," Danny said. The scarred man laughed. "Your crew? You're nothing. Vorn will kill everyone on this ship when he finds out what you've done. He won't find out. Not from you." Danny moved. The scarred man fired, but Danny was no longer where he had been standing. The shot went wide. Danny closed the distance in 2 steps and drove his palm into the man's chin. The pirate's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. 4 down. 4 remaining on the main deck, plus Vorn Gresk. Danny dragged the unconscious bodies into a storage closet and sealed the door. He took their weapons and communication devices. Now he could hear what the pirates were saying to each other. Static crackled. Then Vorn's voice. Report. What is your status? Silence. Report immediately. More silence. Danny smiled grimly. The fear would start now. Vorn Gresk was used to being the predator. He was not used to being hunted. On the main deck, Vorn turned to his remaining pirates. Something is wrong. 2 of you. Find the others. The rest stay here and guard the prisoners. 2 more Talishans left the deck, weapons raised and eyes scanning every shadow. They moved carefully now, no longer confident. The steam in the corridor had dissipated, but the unconscious bodies of their companions were gone. No blood, no signs of struggle. Just empty space where 4 armed pirates had been. Danny watched them from the tunnels above. He let them pass beneath him, then dropped silently to the floor. Behind them, he was faster this time, harder. The old training flowed through his body like electricity. These pirates had killed innocent people. They had stolen and tortured and destroyed countless lives. Danny had no sympathy for them. 2 more down. 2 remaining guards on the main deck. Plus Vorn Gresk. He could end this now. Danny moved back toward the main deck. His body ached from the fighting, but the pain was familiar. Almost comfortable. This was who he had been before the cargo ship and the quiet galley and the peaceful routine. This was the soldier they had created, the weapon they had aimed at their enemies. But Danny was not their weapon anymore. He was not killing for orders or for duty. He was protecting innocent people who could not protect themselves. That made all the difference. He reached the ventilation grating above the main deck and looked down. The 2 remaining guards stood on either side of the prisoners. Vorn Gresk paced back and forth, his forearms clenched into fists. Someone is on this ship, the pirate lord growled. Someone is taking my people. When I find them, I will tear their spine out through their mouth. Captain Griffin raised her head. Despite the blood on her face and the fear in her eyes, she managed to speak clearly. Maybe your people got lost. This ship has a lot of corridors. Vorn backhanded her again. She fell but did not stay down. Tina reached out to help her, and Kevin put his body between the captain and the pirate. Brave, Vorn said. Foolish and brave. I almost respect it. But respect will not save you. Danny needed to act. He could not take out both guards and reach Vorn before the pirate killed someone. The angles were wrong. The timing impossible, unless someone helped him. He looked at the prisoners below. Most of them were frozen with terror. But Tina Morris was watching the ventilation grating. She had seen movement in the shadows. She knew someone was up there. Danny caught her eye. He held up 2 fingers, then pointed at the guards on either side of the room. Then he made a simple gesture that any child would understand. Distraction. Tina's eyes widened. She nodded slightly. She leaned toward Pete Lawson and whispered something. Pete's face went pale, but after a moment he nodded too. Then Tina whispered to Kevin, and Kevin whispered to Captain Griffin. The message spread silently through the prisoners. Pete Lawson suddenly stood up. His whole body was shaking, but his voice was loud. I know where the money is. Every head turned toward him. Both guards stepped forward. Vorn Gresk smiled his cruel smile. Finally, someone with sense. Tell me. It's in the captain's quarters. Hidden safe behind the navigation console. I'll show you. Please, just don't hurt us anymore. Vorn gestured to one of the guards. Take him. Find this safe. If he's lying, remove his fingers one by one. The guard grabbed Pete's arm and dragged him toward the corridor. The other guard followed them to the doorway, his attention focused on the prisoners who might try to run. Both guards were now on the same side of the room. Both had their backs turned slightly away from the ventilation grating. Danny dropped. He landed between them like a falling shadow. His hands moved before his feet touched the ground. One guard received a strike to the throat that silenced him instantly. The other turned and raised his weapon, but Danny was already inside his reach. A knee to the stomach, an elbow to the face. The guard collapsed. Pete Lawson threw himself to the floor. Danny straightened and faced Lorne Gresk across the main deck. The pirate lord stared at him with black, unreadable eyes. Then he laughed. A human. One human defeated 8 of my warriors. I am impressed. Let them go, Danny said. His voice was calm, steady. Take your people and leave this ship. I won't stop you. Lorne tilted his massive head. You think you can give me orders? You think you have one? I am Vorn Gresk. I have killed thousands. I have burned colonies. One human with good reflexes does not frighten me. He raised his plasma blade. But you have made yourself interesting. I will enjoy destroying you slowly. Danny shifted his weight to the balls of his feet. His hand rested near his knife. Everyone has a choice, Danny said. Yours is simple. Walk away and live, or stay and die. Vorn Gresk laughed again and stepped forward. Danny did not move. The final battle was about to begin. 2 hours passed slowly on the steady horizon. Danny served dinner to a crew that was too distracted to taste their food. Everyone talked about the stranded ship. Would they find survivors? Would they be able to help? The mood was a mixture of worry and excitement. Nothing interesting ever happened on cargo runs, and even potential danger felt like a break from the endless routine. Danny collected empty plates and said nothing. He noticed things the others missed. The slight tremor in Pete Lawson's hands as he drank his coffee. The way Kevin Park kept checking his sidearm. The forced calm in Captain Griffin's voice when she spoke about their approach. They were all afraid. They just did not want to admit it. After dinner, Danny returned to his galley and turned on the speaker panel again. The bridge communications played quietly in the background while he washed dishes. Visual contact in 5 minutes, Kevin reported. Slow to approach speed, Captain Griffin ordered. Scan for life signs. A pause. Then Pete's nervous voice. I'm reading 12 life signs on the freighter, all clustered in the main compartment. No movement. Could be injured, Tina said from her station in engineering. Or unconscious from life support failure. Awaiting, Kevin muttered. Captain Griffin made her decision. Prepare a boarding team. Kevin, take 2 crew members and check the situation. Danny stays here. Medical kit ready. Danny dried his hands on his apron. His jaw tightened at the captain's words. They always forgot about him until they needed food or someone to stay behind. But this time, forgetting about Danny might save his life. He waited. The boarding team left through the main airlock. Danny listened to their communications as they crossed the short distance to the damaged freighter. Kevin's voice was tense. The other 2 crew members, young cargo handlers named Rick and Beth, sounded frightened. We're inside, Kevin reported. The ship looks abandoned. Lights are off. We're moving toward the main compartment. Silence. Then Kevin again. I see the life signs on my scanner, but I don't see anyone. The compartment is empty. Wait. These readings are coming from beneath the floor. There's something. His voice cut off. The lights on the steady horizon flickered once. Danny moved away from the speaker panel. His instincts, dormant for 3 years, screamed warnings through every nerve in his body. Captain Griffin's voice came over the ship-wide intercom. All hands, we have a situation. 3 vessels just cloaked around us. We are surrounded. All hands to battle stations. Danny walked to the galley door and looked down the corridor. Red emergency lights had replaced the normal white. Alarms blared. Crew members ran past. Without seeing him, He stepped back into his galley and locked the door. The speaker crackled with a new voice. Deep, cold, not human. Attention, cargo vessel. This is Von Gresk of the Keth Syndicate. Your boarding team is now my property. You will surrender immediately, or I will send their bodies back to you in pieces. You have 2 minutes to respond. Danny knew that name. Von Gresk, Talisian warlord, pirate, murderer. The Keth Syndicate had terrorized these shipping lanes for years. They never left witnesses. They never showed mercy. The distress signal had been their trap, and the steady horizon had walked right into it. Captain Griffin's response came through the speakers. Her voice shook, but she tried to sound strong. This is Captain Laura Griffin. We are a medical supply vessel. We have nothing of value. Please release my crew and let us go. Von Gresk laughed. The sound was harsh and cruel. Your cargo is not my interest. Your ship will make a fine addition to my fleet. Your crew will fetch good prices at the labor markets of the outer systems. Surrender now. My patience is limited. 2 minutes passed. Then the steady horizon shook as the pirate vessels locked onto her hull. Boarding clamps attached with heavy metallic thuds that echoed through the corridors. Danny stood in the center of his galley. He breathed slowly, deeply. His heart rate dropped to a calm, steady rhythm. He removed his apron and folded it neatly on the counter. Then he crouched down and pulled open a hidden panel beneath the floor. The compartment was small but carefully organized. Body armor, light and flexible. A tactical knife with a black blade. A compact stunner pistol. Communication earpiece. All items that should not exist on a civilian cargo ship. All items that Danny had hidden here 3 years ago, hoping he would never need them. He put on the armor beneath his gray work clothes. He strapped a knife to his forearm. He checked the stunner and found it fully charged. He placed the earpiece in his ear and tuned it to the ship's security channel. On the speaker, he heard the sounds of the pirates boarding. 12 hostiles according to Captain Griffin's count. Heavy boots on metal floors. Shouted commands in multiple languages. The screams of crew members being rounded up. Danny moved to a maintenance hatch in the back corner of the galley. It led to the ship's ventilation system, a network of tunnels that connected every section of the vessel. He had mapped these tunnels during his first month aboard. Just in case. Always just in case. He opened the hatch and climbed inside. The tunnels were dark and tight. Danny moved through them like a shadow, making no sound. Through the metal grating beneath him, he could see into the corridors below. Pirates moved in pairs, checking rooms, dragging out anyone they found. He counted them. 12 total, just as the captain said. Most were Talisian, tall and gray-skinned with 4 arms. 2 were human, probably criminals who had joined the syndicate for profit. They carried plasma rifles and moved with the confidence of predators who had never met real resistance. Danny reached a junction above the cargo bay. 4 pirates were searching the medical supplies below, throwing containers aside, looking for valuables. They laughed and joked with each other. Easy work. Easy prey. Danny removed the grating silently. He dropped. His feet hit the first pirate's shoulders and drove him to the floor. Before the others could react, Danny was among them. His movements were fast and precise. A strike to the throat. A kick to the knee. The stunner fired twice at close range. In less than 30 seconds, all 4 pirates lay unconscious on the cargo bay floor. Danny collected their weapons. 3 plasma rifles and 2 sidearms. He could not carry them all, but he could hide them. He placed them at strategic points throughout the cargo bay, locations he might need later. Then he moved back to the ventilation tunnels. 8 pirates remained. On the security channel, he heard Von Gresk's voice. Bring all prisoners to the main deck. We will begin the selection process. Anyone who resists will be made an example. Danny changed direction. The main deck was at the center of the ship. That was where the crew would be gathered. That was where Vaughn Gresk would be done. As he crawled through the darkness, he thought about the man he used to be. Sergeant Daniel Cole, Colonial Marine Corps, Silent Operations Unit, Specialist in Close Quarters Elimination. He had been very good at his job. So good that they sent him on missions that no one was supposed to know about. Missions that left scars on his soul that would never heal. One mission had gone wrong. Civilians had died. Children among them. Danny had followed orders, and those orders had made him a monster. He left the military after that. He changed his name. He found work as a cook on a cargo ship far from Earth. He wanted to feed people instead of killing them. He wanted to create something instead of destroying. For 3 years, he had succeeded. But now the universe had found him again. Danny reached the junction above the main deck and looked down through the grating. The crew was there, all of them on their knees with hands behind their heads. Captain Griffin had blood on her face from a cut above her eye. Kevin Park knelt beside her, his expression tight with fear and anger. Tina Morris was crying silently. Pete Lawson looked ready to collapse. Vor and Gresk stood before them. He was massive, even for a Talisian. Nearly 8 feet tall with pale gray skin and 4 muscular arms. His eyes were black pools without mercy. He held a plasma blade in one hand, the energy humming with deadly potential. "One of you will tell me where you keep the emergency funds," Vaughn said. "One of you will live to spread the story of what happens when ships enter my territory. The rest of you will serve the Syndicate until you die." Captain Griffin lifted her chin. "We're a medical ship. We don't carry emergency funds." Vaughn struck her across the face with one of his free hands. She fell sideways, but did not cry out. "Every ship carries hidden wealth," the pirate said. "Your captain is brave. Brave and stupid. Perhaps watching her die will make the others more cooperative." He raised his plasma blade. Danny pressed himself against the tunnel wall. His fingers tightened on the stunner. Not yet. 8 pirates still standing. Vaughn Gresk surrounded by his people. One wrong move and the crew would die. He needed a better plan. He needed to become the ghost again. The smell of fresh bread filled the small galley of the cargo ship's steady horizon as Danny Cole pulled a tray from the oven. He moved with the easy practice of someone who had done this same task 1,000 times before. The clock on the wall showed 6 in the morning, ship time. In 30 minutes, the crew would wake up hungry, and Danny would be ready for them. He was a plain-looking man of 34 years. Brown hair cut short. Average height. The kind of face that people forgot 5 minutes after meeting him. He wore a simple white apron over his gray work clothes, and his hands were rough from years of chopping vegetables and scrubbing pots. Nobody on the steady horizon thought much about Danny Cole. He was just a cook. The man who made their food appear 3 times a day. As invisible as the air recyclers that kept them breathing. Danny liked it that way. The steady horizon was a mid-sized cargo vessel that carried medical supplies through the outer trade routes of the Volner system. Nothing fancy. Nothing important enough to attract attention. The ship had a crew of 12 people, and Danny had served them all for 3 years now. He knew their favorite foods. He knew who liked extra salt and who complained about too much pepper. He knew their habits and their schedules better than they knew themselves. Captain Laura Griffin was the first to enter the mess hall that morning. She was a tall woman of 52 years with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes from decades of staring at star charts. She nodded at Danny as she took her usual seat by the window. "Morning, Danny. Smells good today." "Thank you, Captain." Eggs and toast. Fresh fruit from the last station. She smiled politely and turned her attention to her datapad. That was the extent of most conversations Danny had with the captain. Pleasant but brief. Professional but distant. He did not mind. The rest of the crew filtered in over the next 20 minutes. First Officer Kevin Park arrived in his perfectly pressed uniform, barely glancing at Danny as he loaded his plate. Kevin was 38 years old and very serious about regulations and proper conduct. He considered the cook a necessary part of ship operations, but not someone worth his attention. Tina Morris came next. She was the ship's engineer, 29 years old with curly red hair that she kept tied back in a messy bun. Unlike the others, Tina always stopped to talk. "Hey, Danny, what's the special today?" "Same as every Tuesday. Eggs and toast." "You know what I mean. The secret ingredient." Danny allowed himself a small smile. "Little bit of cheese mixed into the eggs. Don't tell the others." Tina grinned and took her plate. She was the only crew member who treated Danny like a real person instead of a piece of furniture. He appreciated that more than she knew. Pete Lawson, the communications officer, shuffled in last. He was 45 years old and nervous by nature. His eyes were always darting around like he expected something bad to happen at any moment. Pete mumbled a thank you when Danny handed him his breakfast and scurried to a corner table. Danny watched them all eat. He listened to their conversations without appearing to listen. Captain Griffin discussed the delivery schedule with Kevin. Tina complained about a faulty valve in the engine room. Pete stared at his food and said nothing to anyone. This was Danny's life now. Quiet, simple, safe. After breakfast, he cleaned the dishes and prepared ingredients for lunch. The galley was his kingdom. Small but organized. Every pot had its place. Every knife hung in perfect order on a magnetic strip above his cutting board. Danny moved through his tasks with mechanical efficiency, his mind wandering to places he tried not to visit too often. Around midday, Tina stopped by the galley. This was her habit. She would take a break from her engineering work and sit on the counter while Danny cooked. "You ever get bored down here?" she asked. "Sometimes. Don't you want more? Adventure? Excitement?" Danny's knife moved through a pile of vegetables with smooth, rapid strokes. Tina watched his hands with obvious fascination. "Where did you learn to do that?" she asked. "Do what?" "Cut like that. Your hands move so fast. Like you've had training." Danny paused for just a moment. Then he continued cutting. "Cooking school. Long time ago." Tina did not look convinced, but she did not push the question. That was another thing Danny liked about her. She knew when to let things go. The afternoon passed without incident. Danny served lunch. He cleaned up. He began preparing dinner. The routine was comfortable, predictable, everything Danny had wanted when he took this job 3 years ago. Then, the distress signal came. Danny was alone in the galley when he heard Captain Griffin's voice over the ship's intercom. "System, all crew report to the bridge. We've received a distress signal from a vessel 2 hours away. Repeat, all crew to the bridge." Danny did not go to the bridge. He was not required for emergency meetings. Instead, he moved to a small speaker panel near the galley door and adjusted the frequency until he could hear the bridge communications. Captain Griffin's voice came through clearly. "The signal is coming from a standard freighter. They claim their engines failed and they're drifting toward an asteroid field." Kevin Park responded. "Could be legitimate. Could be a trap." "I know the risks," the captain said. "But we can't ignore a distress call. It's against regulations and against my conscience." Set course to intercept. Danny stood very still. His hands rested on the counter. His eyes stared at nothing. A trap. Kevin was right to be suspicious. Out here in the empty lanes between star systems, distress signals were a common tool for pirates. Lure a ship close. Spring the ambush. Take everything and leave no witnesses. But Danny said nothing. He was just a cook. His opinion did not matter. The steady horizon changed course. Danny felt the subtle shift in the ship's movement through his feet. After 3 years, he knew every vibration and hum of this vessel. He returned to his work. Dinner would not prepare itself. The crew would be hungry after their excitement, and hungry people made poor decisions. As the evening meal cooked, Danny opened a drawer beneath his cutting board. He pulled out a whetstone and began sharpening his knives. One by one, he drew each blade across the stone with practiced care. The sound was soft and rhythmic in the quiet galley. Tina appeared in the doorway. "Did you hear? We're going to help a stranded ship. I heard. Kevin thinks it might be pirates." Danny continued sharpening. His eyes did not leave the blade. Kevin might be right. Tina frowned. "You don't seem worried." "Worrying doesn't change anything." She studied him for a long moment. There was something different about Danny's face. Something harder in his eyes that she had never noticed before. But then he looked up and smiled his usual quiet smile, and the moment passed. "Dinner in 2 hours," he said. "Tell the others." Tina nodded and left. Danny finished sharpening the last knife. He held it up to the light and examined the edge. Perfect. Sharp. Enough to cut through bone without effort. He placed the knife back in its spot on the magnetic strip. Then he sat down on a small stool in the corner of his galley and waited. The steady horizon flew on toward the distress signal. The crew went about their duties, unaware of what was coming. And Danny Cole, the cook that nobody noticed, sat alone in his kitchen with his perfectly sharpened knives. For the first time in 3 years, the ghost of his old self stirred in his chest. He had hoped this day would never come, but hope, Danny had learned long ago, was a poor shield against the universe.